for you to get shortlisted, guess how many points you need? Take a wild guess. Out of 68 points,
50.
Oh, yeah. So this is the ideal perception people have.
Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Laju. I'm a Nigerian living in the UK, and this is another segment of Learn with Laju. So we'll continue on the previous video that we had about how to get into the internal medicine training program. So if you haven't seen the previous video, I'll be putting the link up. I'll recommend that you watch that first. I'll put the link up and I'll put it in my description box. And once again, I have with me here
Dr. Dosu.
Yes, Dr. Dosu is an internal medicine trainee. He's currently in the second year, and he will be going into more details of how to get into the internal medicine training program. So welcome. So my question today for you is, how do you get shortlisted? How do you start the process? Can you just tell us that?
So I'll go straight into the crux of the discussion today, all right? Because you need to understand how to get shortlisted. There are 2 steps to getting into internal medicine training program, and one step is getting shortlisted, and the second step is going for an interview and passing the interview. So people see this as a sort of rigorous process, but it's quite easy if you know exactly what you need to do. Now, there's a scoring system, sort of a point-based scoring system to get shortlisted, and it takes into account different categories. So anything you have done in your life, okay, don't worry, you can be in any country. Nigeria, I'm a Nigerian, so I always use Nigeria as my reference. So whatever you have done in Nigeria still counts, because they look at your undergraduate level experience, they look at your postgraduate level, they look at prizes and awards that you have gotten before in the past, they look at presentations, they look at publications, they also look at teaching, they look at quality improvement projects, and they also look at leadership. So these are categories that they take into account, all right, to see if you will be able to get shortlisted. So all these categories have a maximum score of about 68 points. And I think for you to get shortlisted, guess how many points you need? Take a wild guess. Out of 68 points,
50.
Oh, yeah. So this is the ideal perception people have, that, you have to be, having that very high score. Yes, if you can get 50, that's excellent. I mean, it means that you've already bought an express ticket into getting into INT training. But I'll tell you that you just need a minimum score of 5. 1,
Wow.
2, 3, 4, 5.
5 out of 60.
So 5 points out of 60 points.
Wow, that's a very fair system, I believe.
Yeah, that's the minimum I've seen. I have a colleague who actually got just 5 points.
And
today she's in training.
Wow,
she's in her second year of training as well.
That's interesting.
So so you can see that it's not a very rigorous process at all.
It's not as complicated as
exactly. It's not as complicated as people think. So I'll just go through the categories very quickly and explain to you how it works. So starting from the top, the undergraduate. Okay, they all have, each category has a maximum number of points. So don't worry, we'll put the link in the description below, so you can have a look, by yourself and see, what you need to do to get shortlisted. Okay, so for the first category, undergraduate level, let's say it has a maximum point of, say, 8 points. Okay, it's subdivided. Someone who has MBBS will get more points, which is the maximum points of 8, than someone who has a BSc. Okay, and if you have something lower than the BSc, I'm sure that's also considered as well. I'm sure if you go through the website, you'll be able to see all these categories. So going to the postgraduate level, okay, someone who has a PhD would obviously have more points than someone who has a master's, and someone who has a master's will obviously have more points than someone who has a postgraduate course. Okay, so if you think you have done a master's before, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the master's is medically related or not. The fact that you have a master's would give you a high scoring point. So you can see that just from 2 categories, your MBBS and say you have a master's, you will definitely be shortlisted. That's how easy it is to get shortlisted.
Okay.
All right. So
because since the minimum to get shortlisted is just 5, and you already have MBBS, so that already gives you probably 5 points, or maybe 2 or 3 points. So it shouldn't be hard to get other things, because you would have had other things, and you would have had 1 or 2 other things in other categories. So moving to the next category, have you had a prize or an award? Don't just chalk that under the table. Okay, it's very important. Whatever prize you've had, well, of course, it has to be a postgraduate prize, or a graduate or a postgraduate prize, okay?
say you were the best in your school, you're the best graduating student, or you've had an international prize before awarded to you for a presentation you have made, for example, you can just chunk that bit in and say, oh yes, I've had an international prize, or I've had a prize that was internationally recognized. That gives you even more points than someone who has had a prize at a national level or at a local level.
So what about if I had a prize probably back in high school, secondary school? Does that count?
I don't think that counts, unfortunately, because it has to be at the level of, you know, a higher. Okay, so the next category is looking at your presentation. So what sort of presentations have you had? Have you had presentations at grand rounds before? Have you had presentations internationally? Did you travel to, you know, give a presentation on behalf of your department, for example? If you've had a poster presentation before, that even gives you a higher level of a higher mark. Apologies. All right. So, for example, if you've had an international presentation, okay, you can chunk that in and say, yes, I've presented at an international level, or have made a presentation at a national level. That's, of course, a much lower score than an international presentation. Or I've made a presentation in my department. So if you've made a presentation in your department, most of us have made presentations in our departments before. You know, that gives you a minimum score, but it's something, like I said, even if you get the minimum score in each category, you would even get, you know, more than that minimum score of 5 to get shortlisted.
Okay, so Dr. Dosu, what you're saying is that if I've done a presentation, probably during my internship, hours job days, I had a presentation in my department. You're saying I can add that even.
Yes, you can, because I did that, okay, because I don't have an international presentation. I didn't have a national presentation. All I had was local presentations at ground rounds
and you got
and
points
departmental presentation, and I got points for it.
So how did you show this evidence? Did you have to print out your presentation, or did you go back to your school to get evidence?
Yes, so I had to print out the presentations, and I had to get a few people to give me feedbacks, because that's one important thing to look at as well.
Okay.
You know, look out for feedbacks of your presentation. So it's not just about you showing them your presentation that you have done. Okay, I printed out my PowerPoint presentations, about 3 or 4 of them, and well, I also had some presentations I have done while in the UK as well. So I ranked that on top, because they will understand your presentation more in the UK than the presentation that you have done back in Nigeria. But it doesn't limit you at all. Okay, if you've had a presentation in Nigeria, you can ask a few medical students that you have presented to sort of give you
medical students.
Medical students can give you feedback. It could be just 3, 4 medical students giving you feedback that, oh, they participated in your presentation and they got something out of your presentation, and that, you know, gives you some points as well.
Oh, good. So what else?
So the next thing is about publications. Do you have any publications at all? Don't be alarmed at publications, right? Because not many of us would have had publications. The publications that the Internal Medicine Training Program recognizes, okay, for shortlisting are PubMed cited publications. All right, so many of us would not have PubMed cited publications. I was fortunate to participate in a research that one of my consultants did back home in Nigeria, and she eventually went on to sort of publish that research, and she listed me as one of the co-authors of that publication. So it was good for me, but I scored the lowest point there because it was a publication at a local level. All right, it wasn't a PubMed cited publication. So I still got some marks for publication. And in my interview, I was actually asked about that publication, so I had to give some, you know, evidence that I had participated in that publication as well. So those are the little things that you need to know. Whatever you have done would suffice. Okay, so things like teaching as well. All right, so we have spoken about that, you making presentations, you know, and you getting feedbacks from your teaching. That's very important. The other thing I would need you to, you know, sort of engage in is a quality improvement project. Many of us will not have quality improvement projects coming from Nigeria, or, well, I can't speak for other countries, but quality improvement projects are things that they take very seriously here. And what's the meaning of a quality improvement project? What quality improvement project simply means is you identifying problems, you know, within your practice. For example, you say, oh, nurses do not take urine samples before antibiotics are given for patients that you suspect urinary tract infections in. You can audit that. So an audit would identify the problem, and then you would present that problem, you know, to your consultant, medical students, or to your other colleagues, you know, at work, and say, oh, we've identified this problem, okay, that samples
are not being taken
before antibiotics are given. Okay, that's one thing. And then eventually, once you've presented that topic, that's an audit. All right, so you've audited something, and then you make a presentation to it, and then you have to profess solutions to make that problem better. Okay, so once you profess solutions, you can profess solutions by printing out posters, handing out flyers to people and say, oh, please do urine samples first before giving antibiotics for patients that have got urinary tract infection. So you can also make it very catchy so that people are aware that, oh, there's a problem here. Okay. After a few months, say 2-3 months, you can go back and re-audit. Once you go back and re-audit, you can then compare your results. Now that you have done a re-audit second time, you can compare results to your first result. Was there an improvement? Are people now taking urine samples before giving antibiotics? Most likely your results will be better, and if your results are better, you can say, oh, I have participated in a quality improvement project. Now you would score the maximum points in quality improvement projects if you thought about the topic, okay, and you also made a presentation of the topic. So you designed the project and you presented the project, you get 10 points. If you participate in someone else's audit or quality improvement project as well, you get points for it, but you won't get the maximum score. You might get probably maybe 5 or 6 points because you did not, sort of spearhead and lead the project. Okay, so there are so many lapses in the system. Yes, in the UK, there are so many lapses where you can find things to improve on, and then you get your maximum score of 10. So I did a quality improvement project within a month, because I picked a very quick topic and re-audited it all within a month, and I got the maximum point. Okay. And for internal medicine training, you don't even have to do a full re-audit. You have to just show them that you understand what quality improvement project means, and then you will get the maximum point for that. Okay. And finally, the last category is the leadership category. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. Before that, so for instance, I'm coming from Nigeria and I haven't done. Okay, I'm already working in the UK, but maybe I'm just roughly a few months in and I want to get into the next IMT training, but I haven't gotten a quality improvement project. If I have a score of 0 on that particular segment, is that a bad thing?
No, it's not a bad thing, like I've said, because you might have gotten probably the minimum score in other categories. Okay. All right, and you can get shortlisted. So some people don't have quality improvement projects, don't have audits, but they still get shortlisted. It's just about you getting, some points in each of these categories.
All right. Okay. So you were talking about leadership.
Yeah. So finally, is the leadership aspect. They like to see that a doctor is a complete entity. All right. So they want to see, what sort of leadership roles have you held in the past? Okay. At least a minimum of 3 months would be good to show as evidence that you have been involved in a sort of leadership role position. So you could have been an ex-school in school. You could have been the class rep of your medical school. Really? You could have been in NYC. Probably some of you would have been the what do you call it?
Yeah, I get what you mean.
The clinic, the MD of the clinic in NYC. All right, so.
Well, if you have those roles like class rep and those other roles that you don't really get certificates for them, how do you show evidence for that?
Well, so that's quite difficult, trying to show evidence for that really. But if you can, get any sort of evidence at all.
Can you get feedbacks from people, like people saying things like, oh, she was an excellent class rep? Would that suffice?
Yes, that would suffice. If you can get a feedback like that, anything will suffice. Okay, it's quite easy. It's not that, difficult to get evidence. So if you can get a sort of letter to say, oh yes, while she was in this class, between this so year and so year, she was the class rep, from this period to that period. That will suffice as leadership as well.
Great.
So anything you have done, some people even go ahead and put that they were the leaders of their fellowship in school. All right, and they get evidence from the church.
I'll get in for that.
So they get evidence from the church that they were leaders in so and so department for a period of so and so months, and it suffices. So
any form of leadership role.
Yes, any form of leadership role that you can think about.
Yeah, so this is a wake-up call. Like, most people try to avoid leadership roles, so this might be a good time to put yourself out there, come forward and do something if you haven't already. And if you have, go and dig them out and put them out.
Yes, so go and dig them out. Don't throw anything under the carpet. Just go dust that particular. I was giving somebody an advice about this leadership, and she was telling me, oh, she had done this, she had done that, she had done this, about 5 or 6 different leadership roles. And I'm like, oh my God, if I was in your shoes, because I didn't even have any leadership role, I didn't think about it at the time. It was after my interview, I was like, wow, so I was this at some point, because I was a senator in school. I'm like, oh, I should have gotten evidence for this, that, I was a senator at some point. It was a leadership role. I would have gotten points from it. Okay, because your shortlisting score is cumulative to your interview score. So the highest amount of score you can bag while being shortlisted puts you at a very pole position for getting very high scores after your interview, because it's cumulative.
Okay, so the shortlisting is a separate score. Then for your interview, you also get points for that.
Yes. So for your interview, you're going to be scored because you're going to be going through stations: an evidence station, a clinical scenario station, and an ethical station. So that's like a mini exam of some sort. So it depends on how high you score on that as well.
Okay.
So and then you accumulate everything together to see if you have passed enough to get into the IMT training program.
So the 68 points we mentioned, does that include the interview or just the shortlisting?
No, that includes the shortlisting score alone. In your interview, you can score very high marks, and that will also make you, sort of cross the line over to pass your IMT training. So
is it possible to get shortlisted, get an interview, and still not get into training?
Yes, there are people that get shortlisted, get an interview, probably they get very high marks in their shortlisting, but do very poorly in the interview. You can't get into IMT training program. And some people is the reverse. So they get very low marks, say maybe 5 points or 4 points, and you get shortlisted. And then you get very high marks, but your marks are not just enough for you to cross over the line as well. You might not get shortlisted. So you have to try and do well in both the shortlisting and your interview as well.
Okay. And you mentioned that a colleague of yours had 5 points and she still got into the training. So
she was initially put on the reserve list. Okay. And sometimes when you get an email and say the email just says, oh, you have been successfully shortlisted for the IMT interview, or you might get an email and say, oh, at this point, sorry, at this point, you haven't been shortlisted, but you have been put on the reserve list. So what the reserve list simply means is, if, for example, they don't get to their quota, they can get people from the reserve list to fill up that quota, because they have a minimum quota which they need to fill up, spaces for, every session. So if you're on the reserve list, do not get bothered. Don't be scared, I'm not going to be called out. You can just be called out. Some people drop out of the IMT training as well, even before going for interview. So they get shortlisted and change their minds. So, and that space becomes open. So people that are already on the reserve list, okay, they pull you out of the reserve list to fill up that position. So I had a colleague who was initially, she had just 5 points, okay, and she was on the reserve list and she was very sad about it. But eventually, after about 2 weeks, she then got an email that, oh, you have now been, fully shortlisted for the interview. And she did very well in the interview and passed, and she's now into the IMT training as well.
All right, that's reassuring. So, so can you just summarize for us again? Just
quick summary. A quick summary to let you know that it isn't difficult to get shortlisted. All right, you just need to get some point in one of, or in most of these categories I'll list again. Your undergraduate level, you get some points from that. Get some points from postgraduate level, from prizes and awards that you have received before, from presentations you have made, from publications that you have been involved with, from teaching, from quality improvement projects, and from leadership roles that you have, been involved in the past.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Dosu. I really appreciate having you here. So that's all for today, guys. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel, and feel free to share with anyone who has questions. So the next video will be talking more about the interview process as a whole. So if you want to know about that also, please subscribe. Bye.
Bye.